Welcome to the Ford High School Weekly. I'm your host, Dion Amade. On today's show, we'll be talking with owner and publisher of the Vype magazine, Austin Chadwick. Their 2020 Oklahoma Pigskin preview is coming out soon, so let's briefly interrupt Austin and go ahead and see what they have in store for us over there in Vype. Can you give me a little insight? You know how much I love reading the magazine every year. Who is going to be on the cover this year? That's the question everybody wants to know. Who's going to be on the cover?
We did a little concept cover, and the first thing I asked my guys, hey, give me the top 4 guys in the state. And a couple of them are pretty obvious. You've got some kids around here, especially locally on the eastern side of the state. Dude, AJ Green, Dion, you've seen this kid.
Hand off to AJ Green. Gets the corner. He may be gone.
Yeah, he's special. The Union running back really does a lot of things for him. This kid's he's up there with the kind of the Dominique Franks, type caliber athletes. Trey Brown, the kind of speed that kid had. Now he's playing for OU. It's pretty special to see AJ play. He'll probably be one on the cover. Another one just south of Tulsa, obviously, is Kendall Daniels from Beggs. This kid is a long, athletic. He is the prototype that everybody's looking for kind of a defensive back safety type situation. Kind of got that Cam Chancellor look to him, very physical. And he's a special player. He's been doing it for 2 years now. He started as a sophomore. And so he's a very, very exceptional player. On the west side, Cam Oliver is a really good player at Edmond Santa Fe. I think you've seen him a couple of times.
Yeah.
The kid's a great athlete. Edmond Santa Fe's got a lot of good players now. And then going to the west side of the state, way out there on I-40, you get out to Weatherford, and the Downs kid is a pretty good player. That's obviously Ethan Downs is already committed to OU, and he's a long defensive end, tight end type kid, and but he's pretty special. I mean, the kid gets the ball in his hands and he can go score, and so they put him at running back before. So he's a good player. So and here's what's crazy, Dion, is that it's changed so much. I mean, you start thinking about Josh Jacobs, not just going to Alabama. Because, listen, anybody can offer a kid from Oklahoma, but if the kid actually pans out, like Josh Jacobs did at Alabama, then you go back to Oklahoma and go get another one. And so the next thing you know, when I just couldn't believe it when, Dax Hill is getting recruited by Michigan a couple of years ago. And then obviously Josh Proctor signs with Ohio State,
that was the big one right there. That was the one that opened the door for everybody.
Nope, he's passing. Intercepted. Guess who? Josh Proctor. He is gone.
And so when Urban Meyer and Greg Schiano was his defensive coordinator at the time, when they're coming to Tulsa, all of a sudden Oklahoma they don't fly over Oklahoma anymore. When they come to Tulsa, they're going to go to Tulsa, and they're going to go to Oklahoma City, and they're going to go look at some of these kids. So you're starting to see these crazy offers that Tulsa was kind of a best kept secret for some coaches, where in Oklahoma in general, where coaches, from Arkansas, or maybe every now and then from TCU, or every now and then from Notre Dame, you get coaches coming into Oklahoma because nobody else really knew about it, and you could go find a guy. But now you can't do that. Yeah, everybody knows that Oklahoma, if you come into Tulsa, you're going to go over to Union, you're going to go over to Wasso and Broken Arrow, Bigsby and Jenks and Booker T High School, and you're going to go look for some athletes, because now you don't just have to come look for one kid. You might find 4 or 5 kids you want to really recruit hard. So it's really changed.
And with that being said, I mean, it kind of affects our local schools as well. Like you said, I mean, now instead of being able to heavily rely on these Oklahoma kids, they're having to, branch out more, go to California and all kinds of different states to find top-notch kids, because everybody's going in their backyard and getting their players as well.
That's right. And I think it changes a lot of things. It's not automatic anymore. It used to be, if OU wanted a kid in Oklahoma, they were going to get him. And very, very seldom did they lose out on a battle. Every now and then a kid would choose Oklahoma State if he was an OSU fan his whole life. But overall, you just look at it now. If R.W. McQuarters was coming through right now and he got a chance to go play for Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, he's also going to get that chance to maybe take a trip to Ann Arbor, Michigan, and go to Tuscaloosa, and maybe go to Auburn, Alabama, and look at some of these other big-time programs. And a guy like R.W. might not have been an OSU guy. He might have gone out of state. So it's definitely become much different. You got to fight harder for guys in town, and a lot of it is, and I credit a lot of it to is you got guys from Oklahoma who are coaching at big time programs.
Yeah.
You know, Matt Wells, half his staff's from Oklahoma and Texas Tech, so they're here all the time. And so, you know as well as anybody, when you start seeing some of these schools coming into Oklahoma, you and I, first thing we say is, all right, who's the coach? Who's got Oklahoma ties on that staff that's coming into Oklahoma? And you're just seeing a lot of Oklahoma guys all over the country. And it doesn't surprise you if the next thing you know, you look up and you know, gosh, Rutgers is in Oklahoma. What are they doing here? You know, have they ever signed a kid out of Oklahoma? When you look on staff, you're like, okay, that guy's from Oklahoma. I forgot there's a guy on staff there. And so that's what you're going to do. If you're a college coach, you're going to go to what you know and the coaches you know and the area you came from, and it's much easier to recruit that way.
Check out more from my conversation with Austin Chadwick at YurView.com/OK. After the break, Austin will talk about how high school football has changed since back when he was playing on the gridiron. Here's a clue. They didn't wear leather helmets. We'll see you after the break on Ford High School Weekly. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking to Austin Chadwick. In your opinion, what's the difference right now between high school back then and high school now?
That's a good question. Now, I'll say it's still relatively the same. I think they take a little bit more precaution. You know, back in the day, and I said back in the day in the 90s, you know, there was probably not as much attention being paid to the maybe the medical side of things, where, gosh, if you got hurt or if you got some heat exhaustion or something like that, the coaches did their best and they were trained to do what they could do. But nowadays, I have to give football a lot of credit. I got to give the NFL a lot of credit because I didn't think they could do it and change the way that the game is played, how you hit, how you're able to tackle and all that stuff. But it has trickled down, obviously, into college and into high school and into the youth. People are so much more aware. And high schools, they make it a priority to have a certified ATC, an athletic trainer there working with you while you work out in the summertime, or if you're at practice, the physicians come around more. And so that's probably the biggest component, is that it's more safe. And I try to explain this to parents all the time. You know, I coach little league guys now, and I'm trying to explain to the parents, like, safety is priority one. It does not matter. If a kid, gets popped pretty good and he comes off and he doesn't look right, he ain't playing. That's how it works. And I think parents are more aware of that now. High schools are more aware of that. Coaches are more aware of that. And just the overall health care, if you will, of football athletes today is probably a little bit better than it was back then. But overall, it's still roughly the same. I will say one thing, you know, they Alan Trimble and Bill Blankenship instilled a lot of that summer pride stuff where you work out during the summer. And that was kind of new. You know, we knew guys worked out in the summer to get ready for the season, but when it became regimented and organized and you did it as a team, colleges had really started doing it in the late 80s, early 90s. And then now all of a sudden in high school, but not just high school, but in the youth systems as well.
You mentioned something earlier that kind of, you know, caught my attention. We both were able to reach the next level after high school, which was Division I football, and you mentioned everybody has that goal to get to that next level, but once you reach that goal, it's time to set a new one, and you have to, you know, refocus yourself on setting new goals and accomplishing what you want to accomplish. You mentioned you had to do that. How did you get that accomplished?
When I got to a point where I was in middle school and getting into high school, I kept growing and kept growing. Next thing you know, I was about 6'4", and I had an opportunity just genetically to be able to play at the next level. And luckily, I had the work ethic. I had the ability, had the technique, and was able to maximize with hard work the tools that I had to get myself to a point to where you had college recruiters saying, "Hey, we want to take a chance on this kid and give him a scholarship." So you know, sometimes if you're gifted enough to have some of the genetics, to be tall enough, to be long enough, if you will, and strong enough to give the tangibles, if you will, that college coaches look for, you have to have the hard work, because that's what's going to separate it. Because, you know, like I do, Dion, the minute you walk into that locker room in college, you're like, everybody's big around here and everybody knows how to play. And so you kind of check your ego at the door. You can't bring your touchdowns in high school with you. And generally it's that first day of practice, you get lit up by a senior and you're like, okay, I'm out here with grown men and I got to figure this thing out. So it becomes the survival of the fittest. So
I definitely remember the first time walking into that locker room, seeing Ori Lemon look in front of me and say, "What's up?"
Yeah, that dude.
Ooh, that's a man.
Yes, grown man. And so it's, but it's great. I mean, again, like you said, and there's guys that kind of fall out. There's guys that aren't quite built for that. And when you realize in college, some kids today, and that's the hard part, a lot of them like being recruited, and that's it. They get to college and they really don't amount to much, but they loved being recruited, right? And that's where the guys that make it in college, they don't care how many offers they have. They really don't. They don't care, all the publicity that they get. They just want to play football, and they want to maximize what they've got. And even in this day and age with kids and their brand, especially at the college level, and doing different things. We do the recruiting stuff with the ghost mail stuff we do. And these colleges are telling these kids, hey, we'll help your brand. We'll create logos for you. We'll do different things to help you on social media create your brand. But I always go back to the number one reason why the brand works. The only way that your brand works is if you're any good at football. Okay. Yeah. So you got to be good at football because nobody's going to care if you're not any good at football. So from that standpoint, I just think with this generation of kids, sometimes they want all the glitz and glamour and publicity, but at the same time, it's you gotta show up. And when you get to college and you find yourself in camp and you find yourself dragging and you just want to quit, you don't want any more of it. That's where you got to find out, the gloves are off, if you will, if you're gonna be a decent football player in college and maximize the ability that you got. And it's not for everybody. It really isn't. And so that's what's special about it.
What in the world is ghost mail? It may sound spooky, but trust me, it's not. Austin will have the lowdown on the innovative recruiting tool when we come back. Check out Forward Game of the Week Classics Tuesday and Friday nights at 8 p.m. on YurView Channel 3. And go to yourview.com/OK for complete interviews and local high school sports coverage. Welcome back to Forward High School Weekly. We're talking to Vype Magazine's owner and publisher, Austin Chadwick. So you just mentioned the ghost mail and everything that your company is doing now, and a lot of people have heard of it throughout YouTube, and different news affiliates have been mentioning what you're doing. But I mean, for me as a former guy who was blessed to get offers and receive, letters from other colleges, we know how big of a deal that is. I remember being in high school and all the athletes, if you were getting letters, you put them in your back pocket.
Oh, yeah.
The little letter, the little logo of the school hang out there. The girls would look at it. You would be the big guy on campus. So that's a big deal.
That's a tactic. That's good. That's
hey, man, we were smart about it. So, so your company is the one sending it to the kids here locally in Oklahoma, or kind of clarify what
yeah. Okay. So this was great. Clint Roundtree and I, Clint is a Tahlequah kid. He was an all-state basketball and football player, played with me at Tulsa. And Clint was the director of recruiting at the University of Tulsa. And he and I work pretty close because I've got some printers here, and I'd donate some stuff to the football program at Tulsa. They've got their limitations at the University of Tulsa, a smaller school, and so I would try to help out any way I can. And so what was happening was Clint was doing all the mailers, and you know how it is, Dion. You're stuffing envelopes, you're writing handwritten letters, you're doing, and so as more of the designs started changing, we call them edits now. Where a kid gets something from a school on Twitter, he'll retweet something where, if a kid's getting recruited by Alabama or something, Alabama's put his name and a jersey number on the back of a Crimson Tide jersey in a locker, and the kid tweets it out. So you started seeing different design elements in recruiting. And so what we were doing was we did something and kind of pioneered this, where we started doing it as direct mail. And basically what it meant was you don't have to stuff an envelope. You can send high quality, high gloss, UV coated, great looking prints that will hold up in the mail. You can send them as direct mail. And you and I get direct mail all the time, whether it's Bed Bath & Beyond, this weekend, or the sale going on at Walmart, or whatever it might be. We get direct mail all the time as just consumers. And especially in political season, you get direct mail all the time. Vote for this guy, vote for this gal, all of it. And so from that standpoint, we started saying, okay, well, what if we do it as direct mail? Because there's some advantages there, kind of even down to where it's placed when you get the mail. And so we went through the channels of the NCAA just to get it cleared as general correspondence. And we started it at Tulsa. And I'll never forget, there was a John Tyler high school coach. And John Tyler's a pretty big time school in Texas.
Yeah, it is.
And he tweeted out a photo of all the mail that their recruits were getting. And dude, it had everything. Had Texas and Baylor and LSU. They had mail from everybody. And all the mail was in an envelope. And sitting on top, I kid you not, sitting on top was some of the very first mailings we did was a TU mailer. And it wasn't in an envelope. It was just sitting there. And I'll send you the photo, and maybe you guys can put it up during the broadcast. Yeah. But it was just sitting there, and I thought to myself with Clint, I said, okay, what's it worth to the University of Tulsa to have their mail, not in an envelope, and it's sitting right on top for everybody to see? There's small margins in competitiveness with Division I athletics. And that is a big deal, obviously, to a college coach. What's it worth to Philip Montgomery that his kids that he's recruiting sees his mail before they even open anything else? And so we got some traction. I wrote the business plan that night, and over time, Clint, he was in coaching for 15 years. He wanted to get out. And he flat out told me, hey, I'm coming to work with you. We're going to do this. And we just took it across the country. Clint has been into every D1 program in the country. And now we've got 45 D1 schools we work with. And Tulsa is centrally located. It's great because basically it doesn't matter if it's USC or Michigan or Tennessee or Texas, all these big schools we work with, they'll send us artwork and they'll send us a list of kids, and we get it out the same day here in Tulsa, and it goes all over the country. It doesn't matter if you're recruiting a kid in New Jersey, that we'll get it to the kid in 48 hours. And so it takes a lot of pressure off of these schools to, have the staff to stuff envelopes. A bunch of GAs are in there spending so much time labeling things and stuffing envelopes. Now they can just send us some artwork and a list, and the next thing you know, we're able to get it out for them pretty effectively and easy, and we save them money. And especially this day and age when budgets are getting cut and everybody is kind of watching every dime they spend, we give them the tools to be able to do this and not break the bank, if you will.
Well, speaking as a former athlete, to get some of those letters, keep doing what you're doing. I'm pretty sure they're appreciating it in many ways.
I appreciate that.
Next up, we'll talk to Austin about the name Vype and where it comes from. Trust me, you won't believe this. Check out YurView.com/OK for more Oklahoma high school sports content. You're watching Ford High School Week. Welcome back to Ford High School Weekly. We're talking to Austin Chadwick, owner and publisher of Vype magazine. And here's a question for you. How did the Vype name come about? Because you said it was one thing, and now it's named Vype. And every time you type it in the word, it's like you get that little red underline.
It doesn't spell right. Doesn't mean anything, right?
Trust me, it's the spelling.
Well, we originally called it High School Sports, the magazine. And you get into the branding and trademarking of any kind of brand, that's too generic. We had High School Sports, the magazine. Well, that's like having Cars, the magazine. You can't trademark Cars. You can't trademark High School Sports. So we were coming up with it, and Kevin, this is during his time when he owned it, Kevin Hearn, and his I'll never forget Caden, his little 12-year-old son, he came up with the term Vype because we were talking, what do we do here? Is it a play on words? Do we varsity, hype? And I'll never forget his son saying, why don't you call it Vype? VYPE. And turns out that acronym worked out. It wasn't really an acronym, more of a play on words. But as far as the VYPE.com, that was available, and all the brand, that was easier to brand because it was a unique name. And so that's how we got it trademarked. And we've gone through all that stuff. But that was back in 2007. And so it's funny because you start doing that. And now not only do we have obviously kids who know what the brand is in Oklahoma, because we just cover so many kids throughout the year across the state, you're starting to have second generation kids. You're starting to have kids. You got parents that had kids early, and they're just like, yeah, I remember being in that magazine, and now their kids are in it, right? And so that's when you realize, you kind of shake your head and you're like, goodness gracious, I'm getting old here if I'm getting second generation, kids coming up in the magazine. And so we've been doing it for a while. This year will mark our 16th year. We're getting into it, and then obviously the 11th year we've been doing the Pigskin Preview. So,
Austin, are you telling me a 12-year-old kid?
Yes,
your company.
Yes, yeah. It was. We were. You get these think tanks, and you're trying to figure things out, and you're really overcomplicating things sometimes. And then the 12-year-old kid is like, well, what about, if we want varsity and you're hyping up kids, well, varsity hype. And I'll never forget Caden saying Vype, and I don't know if he got it from like Brangelina, or you kind of merge names together, right?
Yeah.
Bennifer, when Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez. And so he says, why don't you just call it Vype? And I was like, and then everybody went home and slept on it. And we came back the next day and we're like, bingo, that sounds good. Let's just do that. And so, yes, that's how, but I'll tell you, some of these companies sometimes with their brands, you'd be amazed at how they get their brand. It could be a 12-year-old kid coming up with something. It could be a dog that just does something, or the way he sounds when he yells or barks, or you have no idea. And so it's crazy how when I tell people that today, they're like, wait a minute, your brand you've been doing for over a decade is from a 12-year-old kid? Yep, it is. And so that's kind of, we're transparent here. We'll tell you exactly how it works.
That's a great story. When does the new magazine drop?
Mid-July. We'll drop it on mid-July. It's generally, we get it back from the printers. It will be, we'll send out pre-orders. You can go to vypeok.com and pre-order your copy. That means you're going to get it straight from the printer. So you probably get it before we even get it back. And so from there, it takes a few days, but we're going to get it out into on-queues across all the areas. In the Tulsa area, we always go to Midwest Sporting Goods. Everybody's going in there to get their apparel for the year anyways. And so we made Midwest Sporting Goods kind of our exclusive place to go get it. And so people in Tulsa can just go over there and pick that up. And so we've got all different retailers across Oklahoma. But with COVID going on and people kind of doing their social distancing, the easiest way to do it is just do it by mail and get online at vypeok.com. You can order your copy and you're going to get it before anybody else. And so that's the best way to do it. Dion, I'll have your copy. I'll even sign it for you if you want me to.
Wow.
And
Vype's Oklahoma Pigskin Preview is a good way to get up to date on high school football in the Sooner State. I want to thank Austin Chadwick for joining us today and talking about the magic that goes behind producing the Pigskin Preview. To make sure you get your copy, head to okvype.com and order yours now. And guys, don't forget, send us your workout video to me at Dionamade_28. We'll be happy to show the folks how you're getting it done and preparing for the upcoming season. Go to YurView.com/OK for complete interviews and more high school sports content. Thank you for watching Ford High School Week. I'm your host, Dionamade, and until next time, we'll catch you later, guys.